welcome everybody. Huge welcome to our first webinar for 2017. All right, so welcome. Let's see if I can make this move. There we go. To the brain learning and Orff Schulwerk. So I'm going to speak a little bit about Orff Schulwerk tonight. I'm going to speak about the brain. I am in no way an expert on the brain, but I'm certainly fascinated by how we learn and how that impacts on the brain. And so I do want to share that with you. And we're going to have a look at some songs that are on your handout that you can take away with you as part of the theme. All right, so let's have a look at the webinar goals for tonight. So we're going to look at how music and movement is a key ingredient to learning and brain development in the early years. How music wires the brain for effective learning. How music can work several areas of the brain. Music education is a cognitive enhancing activity. And recent findings from neuroscientists. I have recently done a neuropedagogy and music course with the wonderful Robin Staveley from New South Wales, and I'm going to talk about a couple of things that I've learned as part of that course, share that with you tonight. Why multisensory and multimodal experiences help the brain work harder and build vital neural pathways between the body and the brain. How Orff Schulwerk can enhance learning and brain development, and we're going to have a look at a simple thematic unit, an Orff thematic unit with some free activities for you to use immediately. Now, all right, so let's begin and talk a little bit about Orff Schulwerk. And I want to start with a story. My very first experience really with Orff Schulwerk, and it's back in the early 80s. I'd actually done a Bachelor of Education in Music and Drama and the Media Arts, and I'd completed a 4-year degree, and I had no idea how to teach, absolutely no idea. And so I went to a workshop about 3 months into the year, my very first year of teaching. And remember, I had no idea what I was doing. I had very little control over the children. I was in a high school in Melbourne. And I just had no idea about content, no idea about how to engage teenagers. And so a friend of mine said, maybe 3 months into the year, she said, Susie, let's go to an Orff workshop. Now, I'd never really heard about Orff. And I was desperate, so I said, anything, just take me anywhere, I'll do anything. And so she dragged me along to this workshop. It was at Burwood State College, which is now Burwood Deakin University. And oh my goodness, it was revelationary. It was really revelationary. First of all, I had a great time. I really enjoyed myself. I interacted with other human beings. We sang and we played music together and we laughed. It was just joyous. And it really moved me. The whole experience moved me. We sang songs, we did actions, we moved our body. And it was actually back then that I realised how highly kinesthetic I am as a learner. I never realised, and by saying that, that doesn't mean that I look great when I move and I dance, because I certainly don't. But one of the best ways that I can learn, and many human beings learn, is through their kinesthetic sense, through movement. So I went to this workshop, learned a few activities that I could do for my particularly years 7 and 8s. They were a huge challenge for me. I went back to school the next day, and I was in a very old, dirty, it was actually an ex-cleaner's room, and I decided I was going to move out all the desks. So I had all these desks, wooden desks in rows, and I single-handedly moved them out into the passageway. Well, the children came, they lined up, they were ready for class, didn't know what was going on. And I just thought, I've got to do something, because whatever I'm doing now is not working. And I would end up in tears most days. So the kids came in, and suddenly there was this space. And I did movement. We did lots of movement. We did a couple of songs that I'd learned the night before. And look, it still wasn't easy, but I was determined. And over the next few weeks, things got better and better and better. And finally, I was in a situation where the kids actually really enjoyed coming to class. I can proudly say that after a few months, I could see a huge change. And it was because of that very first workshop that I went to. So let me tell you a little bit about the Orff Schulwerk approach. First of all, it's a learning by doing approach. So you don't sit and have someone lecture to you about what it's all about. You actually do. You're actively involved. And that has a huge impact on our brain. And I'm going to speak about that a little later. It's a child-centered approach. It's holistic. So it's a multimodal approach. It's using many different ways into learning, such as singing, speech rhymes, body percussion, movement, dance, instruments, and percussion instruments. It starts very simply, so it's very inclusive. And then we layer simple steps on top of simple steps, scaffolding the learning until you have something quite complex and quite wonderful. It's creative, it's growing, it's evolving. It's based on the fact that everybody's musical, and you can read through the rest of the list. Joyous is something that stands out for me. Inclusive stands out for me. Being moved, actually being moved. I was recently in Hong Kong. I just went for 6 days. It was for an Orff Level 1 training course and also a ukulele course. And we had a great discussion in the Orff Level 1 group because they also wanted to know, well, what are the characteristics of Orff Schulwerk? And really, joy, being moved, spirit. It's the spirit. It's bringing together the body, the soul, the mind, and the heart. So, it's a very beautiful process. And there's a list of some more features of the approach. Okay, so the approach is hands-on, voices raised, hearts open, and minds switched on. It brings the heart, the body, and the soul together through its integration of speech, singing, moving, playing, and improvisation. We must add the world of the body and the mind to the world of the mind if we are to have children use their full, or people use their full capacity to think. Now, Dee Coulter is a neuroscientist from America, and I heard her speak in the United States, and I think that's a beautiful, beautiful quote. So, Carl Orff, and basically the whole process is about tell me. So we have someone that talks to us, just talk. And a lot of us as educators, we talk. And we do that with students we don't remember. We show somebody, we hopefully remember, but actually involving, that's when we remember, we understand, and that's what it's all about. Okay, so that's a little bit about Orff Schulwerk, and of course you'll have opportunities to ask questions. So if there's anything more you would like to know, of course I could have, a whole 5 days just to talk about Orff Schulwerk. But that's a little summary about Orff Schulwerk. Now, music, the brain, and learning. So music-wise, the brain for effective learning. So if we have a look at all these different areas, so through music education, through a regular sequential developmental music education program, where children are receiving music instruction every week, what the research tells us is that their language acquisition, there's a gain of at least a year, language syntax, numeracy skills, Student resilience is up 16%, memory capacity, so IQ is actually raised, attention skills, reading is improved, listening, emotional stability, motor skills. So this is all based on neuroscientific and social research. Now, I want to point you to Anita Collins, and she is a PhD, and she's done a wonderful TED Talks. So if you haven't seen the TED Talks, just write that down, TED Talks, and she has done a whole segment on why music is important, how it impacts the brain, and why learning an instrument is really important. So make sure you have a look at that. So she's got a great website, anitacollins.music, and I'm also on her Facebook page, which is Bigger, Better Brains, and she puts out a lot of research about the brain. So if you'd like to know about that, it's you can go to her website and you'll see that. Now, how music can work several areas of the brain. Now, as I said, I'm not a brain expert by any stretch of the imagination, but the brain is made up of many, many different parts. And if you have a look through this list, let's have a look at the motor cortex, involved in movement while dancing or playing an instrument. The prefrontal cortex controls behaviour, expression, decision-making. You've got, let's see, the sensory cortex controls tactile feedback whilst playing instruments or dancing. So have a look through that list, and music impacts on the brain hugely. So what I've come to understand is that the neurons fire, and it's like fireworks are happening in the brain when we are involved in musical and movement activities. So it's very, very, very exciting. I've put it very simply, of course. So this is another slide from Anita Collins, and music education is a cognitive enhancing activity. So neuroscientists have found music education and music listening have different effects on brain development. So it's really important to encourage children to learn a musical instrument, to be participating in playing instruments in the classroom. Let's see what else. To learn music for at least 2 years really helps the brain in its development. Learning to read music really helps our brain development. And the earlier, the better. And if we can have some really excellent musical models, that's the absolute ideal scenario. But having said that, I believe that every educator can learn to be a really good musical model. And you start by doing it. You absolutely start by doing it. We know many people teaching in early childhood and primary schools that have not got a music background but are doing wonderful music programs, and they model musical learning, which is fantastic. Okay, so what could this type of music education look like? So if we look at babies to 3-year-olds, so we can encourage parents to take their children to regular weekly music classes where the children are involved in active music making, singing, rhymes, moving, dancing, playing percussion instruments. That's what it's all about. Or if the children are at a daycare centre, we can encourage the staff to come along, do some training, and to be able to implement music every day into the program. That's what's the most important thing. And the same with parents. If parents can sing with their children every day, do actions to songs, do some movement with children, play some instruments, or just make some sounds, sound makers around the house, found sounds that you can find in the house. That is fantastic. Then we look at young children, 3 to 7-year-olds. Children can learn an instrument. They can be part of a weekly music program, not always in school. In fact, I'm sorry to say that the research tells us that over 75% of public and Catholic schools in Australia do not have a sequential developmental music program, which is very sad, compared to 87% of private schools in Australia. So that might mean that parents take their children to music lessons outside of school. But of course, the ideal situation is to have music lessons in school. Structured music lessons using drums, body percussion, xylophones, movement and notation as well really helps the brain in its development. Children older than 7, learning any instrument will have huge benefits. So this also comes from Anita Collins. All right, what are some of the myths about music education? That actually children need a special talent or need to be gifted, and this is a myth. So everybody is born with the capacity to become fully musical, just like we're born with the capacity to become fully literate, numerate, and so on, artistic. So it's all about our environment, and children go to school, we expect them all to learn to read and write, and it's no different with music. Children can all become musical through experience. So in actual fact, it's a myth that we are born with the talent and we're born with the gifts. We can all become musical. Music lessons would be a nice extra is a myth. So actually, children that can participate in music lessons, weekly music lessons, actually receive huge cognitive benefits. Well, not only cognitive, physical, social and emotional, huge benefits in many different areas. There's no point learning music unless you want a musical career. No. In fact, the research tells us that children develop skills in every area: physical skills, cognitive, social, emotional, artistic, and so on, through participating in a music program, which has nothing to do with them becoming professional musicians, but it just really enhances their lives. Okay. Now, it gives me great pleasure to share a little bit of information from a wonderful course that I've just participated in with Robin Staveley. Let me tell you something about Robin. Okay, so I've just written this down. Robin is a senior lecturer, Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences, University of Technology in Sydney. She's a PhD candidate in cognitive neuroscience and music pedagogy. And this is her whole work. So she's really looking at the whole area of neuroscience, neuroplasticity, and embodied cognition is one of the big areas that she is looking into. So I've got some notes here and I am going to read them. I'm going to tell you a little bit about embodied cognition. Let me just find it. Okay. So thinking and cognition arise in the interaction between the body, the brain, and the environment. Therefore, the environment must be rich and beautiful to allow for highly networked and synchronized brain connections to be made. Inclusive and active education is essential, and this works in beautifully with the Orff Schulwerk process, which is all about inclusion and active music making. So it's the experience that shapes the cognition. Educators need to demonstrate musicality through their body and by being a musical model. Now, as I said before, it doesn't mean you have to have a 4-year music degree or, you know, have to have learned the piano for 12 years in your childhood. Not at all. You can all learn to be musical through your body. You demonstrate it, you model it through your body. It's all about how is the teacher's body presenting itself musically? Or another way of putting it is, what is the teacher's body doing to teach musically? Okay, so that might mean singing, demonstrating movement, body percussion, and so on. So motor maps are laid down in response to experience. We scaffold the learning. We do things, lots of things, the same, but in different ways to harden motor maps. Teachers need to be physically musical with their students to prime the students' mirror neurons that will be engaged when they perform the actions themselves. Okay, so hopefully you won't ask me terribly technical questions about this, but I hope that all of that makes sense. So how do we embody it as the educator? All right, another concept that I want to share with you that I learned at Robin's course is affordances. And this is basically a tool or a prop, if you like. So if children have props to help them learn, they will be more successful. And it's really interesting that we do use lots of props as educators with young children. But as soon as children get to a certain age, maybe grade 3, 4, certainly grade 5, 6 and up, we tend to stop using props and tools. Whereas these props and tools are so crucial to learning. It deepens the learning, it enhances the learning, it helps to set the fireworks off in the brain if we can have these certain affordances. So the body and body parts can be affordances. Tools can change the brain. Great tool can make you see the world differently. So with affordances, tools are things that we use to make us more skillful. So for example, a cup makes us more skillful at drinking. The cup affords drinking. An instrument makes us more skillful at demonstrating our musicality. So musical instruments afford being musical. A ladder makes us more skillful in climbing. So the ladder affords climbing. So it's really, really important to embody the musicality, to model that, and to use lots of tools and props in our teaching to demonstrate the learning in many different ways. One of the only activities that activates, stimulates and uses the entire brain is music. So what helps the brain work? Moving, to actively be involved. Multi-sensory experiences, multimodal learning. So if a child doesn't get a particular concept at first, then we try another way in. We use a game, we present it as a rhyme, we do it as a song, we use drama, we use the various affordances, instruments, for example, visual arts, and so on, until we find a way in. Social learning is another way that helps the brain work. And for us as educators, a tip: less passive activities, more active activities, less sitting, and lots of moving. Really, the bottom line is we move and our brains grow through movement. So to learn, our brains need our bodies to be moving. So music, movement and learning. In summary, the evidence suggests that music and movement is central to learning and ideally must begin with young children to develop multiple brain systems. The research also tells us that optimal learning occurs when the body through movement is involved, as well as an interaction of all of our senses. Learning through music and the arts can ultimately provide the impetus for all learning, which is very exciting. Couple of quotes here. Many preschool teachers would agree that songs, movement and games are superb neurological exercises. Between the patterns found in music and those necessary for proper neurological development, Eric Jensen, Music with the Brain in Mind, and Norman Doidge, The Brain That Changes Itself. Physical activity is helpful not only because it creates new neurons, but because the mind is based in the brain and the brain needs oxygen. So just have a read through that. I'm not going to read it all. But this is an excellent book. There's a lot of information about neuroplasticity, how if the brain is damaged, if there's a part of the brain that's damaged, then other parts of the brain can compensate. And the brain, it's like the brain is plastic. And so it can recover through building up the other parts of the brain. It's fascinating read and fascinating research. All right, guys, I am going to move on very, very quickly because we are running out of time. I want to share a couple of activities with you just to reinforce everything that I have said. So combining Orff Schulwerk's the principles that inspire, excite and motivate children to remember, understand and love music, really be moved and have joy, a joyous experience. All right, so here's a song called Shake It, and this theme is called Shake It Up. Let's clap our hands and stamp our feet. Let's move our hips. It's really neat. Let's pat our knees and feel the beat. And shake it, shake it, shake it, and shake it, shake it, shake it, and shake it, shake it, shake it, and stop. And so on. I'll play a little bit for you. Hopefully you can hear this okay. Oh, that's not it. That's the wrong one. So let's move on to the next. There's some information. Of course, this is all in your handout, so you get all of this information. This is a song called Sally the Snake, and I've got some instruments here. Hopefully that's going to be the right recording. Slipping, sliding, slithering round, you never know where she'll be found. In a bowl of strawberries or in a milkshake, you better watch out for Sally the Snake. Here's Sally, hiss, with a snaky kiss, hiding in the sand. You need to understand, don't get a shock. Who's that in my sock? Stop! If you want to stay safe, don't step on Sally, for goodness sake. Now, of course, it comes with lots of movement. So, Sally the Snake is slithering, sliding, and slipping around on the floor, moving in many different ways, and we model that with the children. That's one way that we can use an affordance. So the body becomes an affordance. We learn, we deepen the learning through using the body. We learn about making the letter, making the sound by making that sound and also reinforcing it with another affordance, an instrument, which affords musicality. So we can use an instrument like this. So we are helping all the neurons to fire in the brain, all the fireworks to go off, building the neural pathways between the brain and the body through using, by first of all, using embodied cognition through our body and using affordances, tools to help deepen the learning. So I'm kind of whizzing through this, but this will all be in your notes. Let's have a listen to a little bit of it. I hope you're driving it home. Sliding, slithering round, you never know where she'll be found. In a bowl of strawberries or in a milkshake, you better watch out for Sally the Snake. Sally hiss, with a snaky kiss, hiding in the sand. You need to understand, don't get a shock. Who's that in my sock? Stop! If you want to stay safe, you don't step on Sally, for goodness sake. And so on. I know some of you will be asking, that song has been recorded on our alphabets resource, and it's a collection of 26, well actually 27 songs. There's one song for each letter of the alphabet, and each letter is the name of an animal. So we've got Ali the alligator, Ben the bear, Cooper the caterpillar, of course Sally the snake. I lie, so it's 26 songs, but we have written a song all about the alphabet as well. So there you go, that's alphabets. Let's move on. And finally, Jazzy Jive. Some of you may know this. This is a song from our Move It album. And here is a whole process. It's an Orff process where we are combining singing, moving, improvising, giving children an opportunity to improvise. Face your partner, everybody. We do a do-si-do, do-si-do, and give a high five. Take 2 steps back and slide together. Improvise to this jazzy jive. Now you can do all kinds of different improvisation. You can do improvisation on your body. You can do vocal improvisation. You can do movement improvisation. You can play instruments as improvisation. So there's a lot of different media that you can use. There are some ostinato parts here. And I'm not going to go into what ostinato is today. if you're interested, you can come along and do a course that we run, and also the Orff Association runs training courses. So let me play you a little bit of the Jazzy Jive.
Face your partner, everybody. Don't sit down and give a high five. Take 2 steps back, then slide together. Improvise to this jazzy jive. Face your partner.
And so on. So we can sing with the recording, we can do lots of improvisation, and then after that, if the children are at an age where they've had quite a lot of experience in music, we can be incorporating, as I said, percussion instruments and even melodic instruments. So here are some parts for melodic instruments, and a whole process is written out for you here as well. So hopefully that will be really of benefit to you.